this question presupposes an adult choosing a book for a child. Now, adults have their own way of looking at what they think is good for their child. And generally speaking, the normal average adult will want a book that teaches the child something, that imparts a message to the child. I would counter this by saying that a good book always speaks to the reader, always has if you want to call it that, a message for the reader. A message that does not have to be spelt out in so many words. So it's kind of, unnecessary really to look for a message in a book for a child. Okay, and I would say that very, very categorically. So what would I look for in a book? Any book, not necessarily a book for a child. And for me, it applies equally to books for myself as for my children, say, or my grandchildren. I think that's something that appeals and that engages a reader's emotions, a book that stimulates you to think, a book that takes you beyond the pages of the book, a book that sparks ideas, a book that creates that moment, where things sort of fall in place and you literally hear that gear click into place. That, I would say, is a good book. The writer Suniti Namjoshi always says that children are literalists of the imagination. This comment of hers has always struck me, and it has led me to think that small children, we all know that children believe very easily. They believe, spontaneously they believe. So a book that acknowledges this innate quality in a child and that leaves a child feeling hopeful, that would be a good book. See, online is very difficult because, you have to go by what someone else is saying. You have to go by the promotional material for the book. Something that takes you a little closer to the book is perhaps a visual of a couple of pages. So you get a feel for the pictures, for the look, for the text, for the writing. And so that's for online. And online is tough. Because ideally for a book, you have to touch it, feel it, hold it, actually read it, look at it from the front, look at it from the back, turn the pages, flip the pages. So in a bookstore, I would say, I always look at how a book starts, the first couple of paragraphs. Sometimes even the very first sentence will captivate me. And then I'll think, okay, this book has something that appeals. Of course, sometimes you read the back of the book. Personally, I don't do that. I look at the front, I look at the first page of the book and I read a few words. And if I feel, I hold it in my hand and I feel, okay, maybe this book will speak to me. So it's a very instinctive thing. I mean, I can't give you a scientific formula, for how to select a book, So yes, if I have to say one thing, it would be, I like to see how a book launches into the story. So it's the first page itself. Anything and everything. There are so many genres and so many forms of writing. There are so many themes, so many subjects. I don't think anything is taboo. It's not like you can say you should have only books about history and not books about sport. You know what I mean? I think anything and everything. What actually powers a collection, anybody's book collection, is the individual's interests, the parents' interests, or the adults' interests, whether it's a teacher or any other family member. And when it comes to the child's own interests, where adults allow the child the freedom to choose his or her own books. Ideally, if I were collecting books for somebody, for a child, I would try and include as many different subjects and themes and genres as possible. You can't read everything at one time. You can't enjoy everything at one time. You have to discover all these things as time goes by. And as you go along, you may discover that you like certain kinds of books more than some others. And it doesn't matter. The underlying fact is a well-written book, a book that appeals to your sensibilities, will grab your attention no matter what. For instance, I'll tell you, speaking for myself, I've been a reader since I was a small child. Since the very first time I held a book upside down and tried to read it and didn't realize, that was long before I actually started reading or was able to read. I realized that over a period of time, that it was the writing that actually finally engaged me. For a long time, I just didn't like or enjoy, sci-fi, fantasy type of writings until I, stumbled upon something that engaged me. The first book in the Game of Thrones series. And I said, okay, I've watched this because my son insisted I watch it. But I want to see what the book is like. So I picked up the first book one. And I was quite amazed at, how engaging it was. So it's never too early or never too late to start enjoying something. And it is the quality of the writing that actually draws you into that. So that's what I would say. I would say open up your collection, open up your library, include as many different and diverse things. It's just like life, You open your heart and your mind to all kinds of people, all kinds of experiences. That's what life is all about, and that's what reading is all about. That's what books are all about. Anything and everything. It all depends upon how that particular thing is talked about. We're all living in a very real world. We're all, and we're all exposed to all kinds of experiences, some positive, some negative, some scary, some uplifting, all kinds of things. I think in real life, children are exposed to all kinds of things. So in books too, they could be exposed to all kinds of themes. I mean, just as in real life, you don't want your child to be frightened. You don't want to scare your child. It's the same kind of protection strategy that you would want to use in a book for a child as well. Like I said right at the start, I believe that books should always leave people with a sense of hope at the end. And children also, they react in their own ways. They surprise you with their reactions. We cannot take anything for granted. We cannot assume that a child, this kind of book will leave this kind of impact on a child. As far as writers go, as far as book creators go, we have certain things that we keep in mind and we write accordingly. We create books accordingly. Hope is the key. One thing I would say that we don't practice enough and which definitely makes a difference is reading aloud. Sometimes reading aloud to yourself, adult reading out to a single child, adult reading out to a group of children in a classroom, at family reading alouds, even if a child doesn't quite understand what is being read aloud. Sometimes I think, you get together, we do so many activities as families, we go here, we watch movies. So why can't we listen to stories? We listen to stories being told, oral, this whole thing of the oral tradition. So we can build reading aloud into this practice as well, can't we? And you start reading a chapter every day or once a week or something. Everybody is listening. So you get used to listening and the child sees somebody looking at a book and reading aloud, which brings me to the next point that, a lot of parents complain that their children don't read. And my question to them always is, do you read? Does your child see you read? Does the child see you holding a book in your hand, engrossed in it? We know children imitate adults no matter what. So if we are seen to be reading, the child, when he or she is very, very small, will see that as a thing to do because, mom and dad do it. That's one way of engaging children. The other thing is seeing other children read, so this whole thing of peer activity. So my friend reads and she is reading this book, so I also want to read this book. So if when the child is small, a child is helped to understand or is encouraged to understand, to see the book as a toy, not as a thing to do, but as a toy, then the engagement with the book as something to play with and play slowly developing into reading. That's another strategy that I find works, that helps. And then when the child sees how somebody else is using a book, reading it, turning the pages, spending time looking at each page, the child will also imitate and try and do whatever that other person is doing. One thing I would say is not to censor what a child is reading. So like I said, if a child likes cars, so what if the child reads books only about cars? So what if the child reads books only about wrestlers? So what if the child reads only fantasy stories, So what? It's the reader's prerogative to read whatever he or she wants. There is one list that I think is important, and that's, the Parag Honour List, right? So, because the Parag Honour List actually, it's not just about selecting what a jury thinks are the best books, but promoting the idea of looking for good quality books. These are pointers. The books on this list are pointers to other books, that help you and help the reader look for good quality, good content. These would be mainly for people who find it difficult to decide what a good book is. Now, we can't always say whether a book will be good or not. Sometimes you just have to pick it up on good faith. Lists serve a purpose, but beyond that, it's up to the individual what makes a book appealing and respond to that. It's all about responding to good writing. Writing is a very, very sophisticated art, and you have to develop a sophisticated reading mind in order to understand that and in order to truly enjoy the experience of a good read.